Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special bonus episode of the Book Wars Pod. I am I am Chris. My pronouns are he, him, and I'll be honest, it didn't really hit me until I was listening to the theme music how long it's been since we recorded. So this is very exciting, and I'm glad to have everybody here. For our listeners, we are taking a step away from the books for this episode, and we're going to look back at season 2 of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. And we're going to do that by talking about the show, but also in particular, one of the issues that is just really, really, really important that some people were talking about on Twitter, Disney is not talking about enough, and that is the issue of transphobia by cast members of the show. As some folks know, Gina Carano is problematic on Twitter. I think is putting it lightly. She has a history of being very transphobic and also encouraging coups against the United States government. So that's cool. And also Rosario Dawson, who was revealed to be playing Ahsoka this season, and in the new Ahsoka show that's coming on Disney Plus, has a currently pending lawsuit against her for attacking a trans man who was previously friends with her family. And so there's a lot of disturbing stuff that's happening, and we wanted to talk about it with a really excellent panel who were willing to share their thoughts and share their feelings about the show. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. And also, when I do, if you want to say what you're drinking, that is great. I personally am drinking a cup of Earl Grey tea from Orange Street Storehouse, which is a tea company, a Black woman-owned tea company in Atlanta. They're excellent. Highly recommend. And let's start with Justice, who is at Firespray Proto on Twitter. Justice, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Greetings and salutations, everybody. I am drinking a coconut LaCroix, and happy to be here.
Awesome. And then we also have Tyrone, who is Blood Quantum Entanglement on Twitter.
Hi, my name's Tyrone, like was mentioned. I run some community gaming spaces and just kind of general nerdery for Native Americans on the internet. And I am drinking a coffee I wish I could remember the name of, but it was honestly just what was on sale at Grocery Outlet.
Listen, I respect that. Half the time, the coffee I'm drinking is just like, we got a free sample from Target. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not above like finding the hotel single in your luggage and like tearing that apart to make coffee at midnight.
Yep. You got to do what you got to do. Awesome. And then we also have Dillon, who is at @adilldev on Twitter. Dillon, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks again for having me. I am drinking just normal water out of the tap.
Love it. And then last but very not least, we have Danny, who is a friend of the pod, and we are so glad that we finally got you on, Danny.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here. My name's Danny. My pronouns are they and them. And Dillon and I coordinated our drink choices tonight. I'm doing it Northwood style, drinking tap water out of an Nalgene. So,
love it.
Awesome. Producer Kristen is here, as you'd know from the DJ air horn. I am drinking limoncello LaCroix, which is good, but also just want to say thanks for everyone doing this. And now I'm going to turn myself down again.
Now I really wanted LaCroix since two of you are drinking them. I'm going to have to figure that out later. Awesome. So one other thing I just want to briefly mention before we dive in is if you listened before we took our hiatus, we were highlighting various charitable organizations to donate to instead of donating to us. What we're going to start doing this year is for each kind of grouping of episodes that we do, we're going to focus on a different racial justice organization that folks can donate to, just to give people some ideas of great organizations out there that are doing fantastic work, and ideas for if you have some spare funds, where you can send those. So for our Mandalorian episodes, we are encouraging people, if they have the means, to give to the National Black Trans Advocacy Coalition. They're a wonderful group doing some really great work for the Black trans community, which is an extremely vulnerable and marginalized community. So if you have the funds, we encourage you to send them their way. All right, so let's dive right in. And I would love to hear all of you kind of just talk about what it was like to watch The Mandalorian this season. And, I think we all like Star Wars. I think it's fair to say. I think when you watch something that you generally like the franchise, you try to enjoy it. But it's also, you're being bombarded with seeing Gina Carano and Rosario Dawson, who are two people that, at best, their transphobia has been kind of skated over. At worst, it hasn't even been addressed by people at Disney and Lucasfilm. So Dillon, let's start with you. What was it like to watch Mandalorian this season?
It was a bit of an emotional roller coaster, admittedly. I really enjoyed the first season. The first season just felt a lot of fun. And there were definitely like fun aspects in this new season as well, but the fact that Star Wars fandom in general does love to try to skate over difficult topics, whether the topic is transphobia or homophobia or racism or fat phobia or any of these. So it was really frustrating to watch people rush to find excuses. Less so for Gina Carano, because she was like people were that was less frustrating. It seemed like a lot of folks were on board with Gina Carano, calling out Gina Carano. There was also, but still her being present in an episode was still just that reminder of what she was choosing to use her platform for. Same with Rosario Dawson, and also I'm the actor's name, Bill Burr.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Bill Burr. I actually forgot that he had a history of transphobia as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And I actually didn't know that as well until this episode, when they brought it up, when some folks on Twitter brought it up, like, hey, this fella's kind of made his lot as a comedian, punching down, and it is and in those cases it was frustrating because there were things that I wanted to celebrate about each of these characters, but at the same time, it's just kind of a constant reminder of we're living in a society that doesn't see folks like us as full people. And so, there's still stuff that I still really loved about The Mandalorian season 2. There's still stuff that I go back and watch and enjoy and listen to, but that is just kind of something that's really hanging over it. That kind of dampens the enjoyment. Things that I wish I could celebrate, but I can't bring myself to.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna call on people as we go through, but also if y'all have responses and things to say, please do jump in. That is very encouraged. Tyrone, what about you? Kind of similar question. What was it like to watch this season?
Yeah, no, it was kind of like, that was, I think with Carano, that was kind of one thing. We all knew that was gonna happen. There's no way to just kind of jettison that character from the show. I mean, there are, but there's no way there's no practical way they were gonna do that. That wasn't a realistic expectation, I guess. But the Ahsoka thing, I remember watching and talking about the show with people, and that being such a bigger disappointment, just because she's kind of this character that a lot of people, a lot of young queer women that I know, that's their favorite Star Wars character, and everybody was hype about her potentially jumping into this new era, this new part of the franchise, having potentially this whole spin-off show in live action. And then the casting, like one decision made it so that we had to be against this character and putting her forward in like live action now, which was like a really, I don't know, like it's kind of like it's one of those like bare minimum things to pivot on, but like it was just like this huge pain in the ass when you were going into the second season expecting to be hyped for a lot of these things that were coming down the pipe, and then it had to become this weird, like, I don't know, maybe they'll just use Dawson for a bit part, and then no, the thing that we all knew was going to happen happened, and yeah, it was just kind of that. It was kind of that this moment where like you had people that were really frustrated with the show because of that, and then you had this circle of people who just wanted this show to be fun.
Hey, producer Kristen here. So the last part of Tyrone's thoughts got cut off here, unfortunately. And the beginning of Justice's thoughts got cut off as well, unfortunately. Even our backup recording failed. So rather than keep you guys from this great conversation, I just wanted to record a little interlude to give you the explanation of why there is a little bit disjointedness there. But enjoy the rest of the conversation.
Very much like Ahsoka is my favorite Star Wars character. I have an Ahsoka tattoo on my arm. So she's kind of been there for me through my whole journey with Star Wars and with like my queer identity. So very much like I remember in March when the first leak of Rosario's casting came out, and just kind of everybody bringing it up then, and nothing happened. And of course now we came when we finally, the thing that we all knew was going to happen, as you said, happened. And I don't know, I guess I was just frustrated by how many people like don't want to engage with something that makes them uncomfortable. Like I understand like cancel culture, as Gina may say it, is sometimes not great, but I think in this it is very important that people like can look at media, and it's not like we can't separate the artist from the art in this. Like I love Ahsoka as much as the next person. I enjoyed the episode even, and I know people have different qualms with production or this or that, but I truly enjoyed it, and I enjoy where this character is going, but it's going to always be overshadowed by the fact that no one's addressed it. The assault claims, and very much like even the Vanity Fair article that like lightly touched upon it, they skated around the actual question, which she responded saying that, oh yeah, like I'm very supportive of the LGBTQ community. My track history shows that. And it's like, cool, that's not what people are upset about. We're not asking if you're a transphobe in broad general terms. It's specifically like, did you assault this man because he's trans? Easy yes or no question. And the fact that that hasn't been addressed, I think, is an answer in and of itself, which is really disappointing.
Yeah, and if I may jump in, like the part about that I think you touched on is like, this is like holding people accountable, of course, is always a thing, but like this isn't. She had a fucked up secret Tumblr and made some bad posts, and now is like talking about how she grew pat. Like she assaulted somebody. Allegedly, since we're talking about like in recordings, but like that's kind of the thing that kind of pissed me off about the whole people trying to just have fun with this season. And like everybody here said, we all watched it, we all took what we could from it, but not wanting to engage with that uncomfortable thing when it was a actual dangerous criminal act and not, Twitter beef or something like that.
Yeah. I feel like it speaks to like a larger, I guess, cultural thing of like we know that I guess mass media doesn't really look at trans people as like, I guess even in terms of like the money, I guess even that we like put into fandom and into merchandising, like there isn't a consideration of like, oh, like we're worried about like losing this subset of people, so we're not gonna address these things from a company standpoint. But very much so, even like I remember earlier in, I guess it is a new year, but in the fall of last year when Laverne Cox was assaulted out in public, and the most famous trans person in the country, and no major news covered it at all, and most people found out about it from her Instagram lives. And I feel like that speaks just even broader, like people don't care if they don't have to, and it's really disappointing to even see like really big like content creators in fandom that just want to gloss over and don't want to even address the fact to, I guess, not stir feathers. And it's like, well, why is that? Like, why are you concerned with, I guess, a user base and a fan base that doesn't care about other people in this space?
And Danny, what about you? How did you feel about this season and those appearances?
Well,
please, yeah.
Well, I just want to comment on that. What was it we were talking about just now first? But that there was it? Where was the article? Was it Vanity Fair? The Bresnikan article?
I believe so.
So an article came out like shortly after the Ahsoka episode came out, in which basically, I think Chris, you alluded to this, that they asked the question, and I mean the question they asked was, there are some allegations for your family. And Rosario said, well, they've been dropped and I support trans people. And then basically that to me, like, I just had this image in my head of all of Star Wars, like wiping their hands clean and just going, there we go. We took care of that. Everyone's good. We can all move on from those pesky vocal minority who are being so obnoxious about this issue. And so many people are willing to suddenly put trust and faith into our justice system when a character that they enjoy is on the line, like this is a textbook case of a person with just exponentially so much more power than the other person. And maybe the charges have been dropped, but that's what happens when you have one party that has millions and millions of dollars to funnel into legal fees and the other does not. So the fact that, again, you just see everyone in the fandom says, well, the charges have been dropped, so let's just move on and enjoy the character. And it shows when and how they're willing to prioritize trans lives, and that really sucked as a trans fan. My experience watching The Mandalorian this season was I too really enjoyed season 1. I still haven't decided whether it's because it's just the first Star Wars live action television or because it's actually good television. I haven't figured out that distinction in my brain yet. I'm excited for more Star Wars TV shows because it's the first one. We're setting the baseline, and I'll be curious to look back 5 years from now when we have, what are we up to, like 700 shows now, and we can like compare and see where it falls. But like I enjoyed the first season, and the second season, every time I sat down to watch an episode, I had to like justify to myself that it was okay that I was doing this.
Please God,
which is, it's fucked up. This is Book Wars Pod, right? We're swear. Okay, yeah, it's fucked up. Like I shouldn't have to sit here and like tell myself these are the reasons why it's okay that I'm watching the show. And usually the reasons were Pedro Pascal, because Pedro Pascal should be protected at all costs. And it's really like a thing that I came to realize is that on pretty much every TV show I'm watching, there are probably at least, we talked about 3 names. There's probably at least 3 people somewhere in the production of that show who share those views about trans people and trans lives. And in this case, they just happen to be 3 people that are really at the forefront of the show because they're 3 major cast members. But I just had to like remind myself that like this is a team effort, this is a group effort, and there are so many good people that are putting their work into the show too. And it stinks that I had to put that asterisk next to the show and I couldn't just sit down and enjoy the show, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's something that that I think we've all kind of mentioned here was we wanted to like it. We each of us wanted
to be able to be excited for Ahsoka. Each of us wanted to be able to just enjoy this show.
And everyone else who's trying to make it like we're the fun police trying to, rain on everyone's parade.
It's not that we want to hate the situation.
We would love if we weren't put into this situation. So it's not on us. Like, it put the onus on like Lucasfilm for hiring these people and then being silent about it. Like, we don't want to be in this role, but
it's the value that Lucasfilm has kind of demonstrated that they view us as, like Justice brought up. And also it's
kind of revealing how much the fandom values us.
And not just being silent about it, but like leaning into it, right? Like these views had been expressed for plenty of time before they announced that, we're doing a spin-off show starring this actor and also this other spin-off show, which they haven't confirmed stars Gina Carano, but this Rangers of the New Republic sure feels like a Gina Carano show.
Yeah, and I think like not even like remaining silent on it. Like I think one thing that you were talking about, Dylan, was like hearing the actual complaint. I think a lot of people heard like we can't have shit. And they took it as like, you're a transphobe if you watch the Baby Yoda show.
And can we get t-shirts that say that?
And like, that's not what people were saying at all. It was like, yeah, we don't want to have our bullet points of what we're going to discuss to justify the fact that we watched the fucking second season as it came out. Like, we just wanted to have our little Star Wars thing and have our little escape from 2020 for 5 minutes. But no, like, we have to be at work now while we're watching our show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think you all put it really, really well when there's this hostility from kind of the community at large. That's always kind of been there when you look at the way that the sequel trilogy has come and the casting of it, and in particular casting John Boyega and Daisy Ridley in starring roles in The Force Awakens. And you get the older white fan, I think usually white male fan, that just wants to like Star Wars and wants things to quote feel like Star Wars. And they always are accusing people of like going in with bad faith or not wanting to like things. And it's and as you all said, it's not that at all.
Yeah. I think too, something that is like with Star Wars, it's like it's a fantasy setting. Like it should be escapism, and it is unfortunate that as marginalized people and then marginalized fans, we have to engage critically with the content. But I think that is very much like the role of content in any setting, and especially like a fantasy world. Like, you want to portray that everybody has opportunity, and like we see that across like all these different like species and whatnot in Star Wars. There shouldn't be any reason why like queer people can't also have representation and have I guess rights, and like that goes in front of the camera and behind it. And it is definitely disappointing, I guess, to come to the conclusion that like there's still work to be done. I think it's really nice to like look at fantasy in any setting and be like, this is great. But there's work to be done. We haven't solved racism. We haven't solved homophobia. And very clearly transphobia hasn't been solved either. And it's just it's disheartening to realize that there's so much work
Yeah,
to keep
absolutely.
going.
And I think we've seen, some of the non-screen media. There's a few examples of non-hetero, non-cis characters in the books. I think one of the most prominent is Taka Jamarisa from Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older.
Love Taka. Taka, amazing. Love
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a Taka appreciation podcast.
them.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just I remember Daniel Jose Older has been like he's on TikTok now, and he's been also sharing his TikToks on
Twitter, and one of the things that he said, which I really enjoyed seeing, was
he was talking about Taka, and he said how important it was that one, Taka got to say their pronouns, and two, that Han and Lando immediately jumped on and just used their pronouns, no problem, because to quote Older, they're heroes, and that's what heroes do. And
heroes,
so,
but also two of the scummiest people in the galaxy. And if two of the scummiest people in the galaxy can handle these pronouns, anyone can. Like, Han and Lando, love them. They don't set the bar high for like being good people, which is part of why they're relatable, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think-
no, it reminds me of one of my favorite kind of like analogous moments from Deep Space Nine, which is somebody calls Jadzia Dax, which is like this person who switches bodies every generation by their old name and pronouns, and she corrects them, and they just immediately, and it's this like bloodthirsty Klingons like, Jadzia, my old friend, and it's like immediate just correction, and we're gonna keep moving.
I loved that moment. That was such
Star
a
Trek is,
that was a good moment.
and this isn't a Star Trek pod, but Star Trek is a lot better on a lot of issues than Star Wars, and that's always really been the case. Like Star Trek was much more intentional about how it handled representation back when it started of race and having Uhura in a prominent role, and now with issues of sexuality and gender identity in shows like Star Trek Discovery. But Star Wars is just not there at this time.
Well, and I think it's because they're two very different things. Like at its core, Star Wars is like fairy tales, it's fantasy, and fantasy as a whole has this really big problem with like you have like trans people that are working within fantasy who are really good at this, and you have cis people who are just like, bless your heart. But it's like, how do we approach gender when you have things like magical items that can switch people's bodies around? And I feel like Star Wars kind of falls into this thing where it doesn't know how to just like do that a lot of the times. They have to be Star Wars, and they have to like explain to you the mystic ritual and stuff, and it's like, or you can just fucking be non-binary.
I think there's also a difference in just like you said, the intentionality of it, and like the intention of the origin of both of these things, of Star Trek and Star Wars. Like there was a certain, like, Gene Roddenberry isn't a perfect person. Like there's a lot of issues like in a lot of his worldviews, but he did approach Star Trek with the mentality of, okay, how can I envision a better future for us? And so like that was the starting point for Star Trek. And so every time like we get a new iteration, the people involved, flawed though they may be, they are still trying to think of that, okay, what is a better future that we can imagine? Whereas George Lucas, like you mentioned, he went out to write a fairy tale. He went out to write, a Buck Rogers, Kurosawa homage. He wasn't going out to like specifically declare a specific moral. There are morals in there, but I don't think he was necessarily as cognizant. Like there are parts that we can see of him being like, I want Leia, to not be some damsel in distress. I want her to like, I want her to have an action figure. I want her to be an action hero. But at the same time, there wasn't a deliberate decision of, I'm envisioning a better future for people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even like at its core, like, I mean, the Empire is built on oppression. But I feel like what's really interesting is even like textually looking at it, I can't, like, at least in the original trilogy, besides Ula, I'm not sure that there's much of like a representation of like slavery. But then like in the expanded material, it's just rampant with the way that Twi'leks are treated and just the human supremacy of the Empire that I feel like wasn't even in the original text, but as like more story was added, it just became this very like human centric thing that is translated poorly, I feel like, in the way that representation in general is addressed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think a lot of that is because, like, this is, like, it's kind of funny, like, the old expanded universe, and we're talking about, like, older's books, like, because in that old expanded universe, you had this very common trap where it was, like, people who don't experience anything akin to these oppressions trying to write about them, and so it falls into these really, I mean, things that we know and can spot, like, now, like, white saviorism as a narrative, like that sort of stuff. But when it was like back then, it was just like, oh yeah, there's these dime store Star Wars novels. They literally don't mean anything. And I think that's where a lot of this like culture within the fandom, where they kind of treat transphobia and racism as this kind of default that's there and shouldn't be challenged, because one time there was this book about it, started coming from, because that's what everybody was kind of reading unsupervised in their formative years.
Yeah.
Like, my parents never supervised any of the fantasy or sci-fi. It was good that the kid is reading. Like, throw more books. Like, here's a book fair ticket. They ever check the politics? Like, who thinks to check the politics of a book with a hologram cover?
Yeah. I think it's a good point too, is that we, as opposed to like the old expanded universe, and what we're seeing now is that everything does seem to be intentional, and we are luckily getting more diverse writers, at least in the novelization area, that it'll be interesting and hopeful that we see more, I guess, kind of rise in other places throughout Lucasfilm storytelling, because I feel like it also always comes down to, like, if you're not in a place of, I guess, being oppressed or being on, I guess, the receiving side of negative portrayals, you don't have to think about it. And it's not even that you don't necessarily want to, it's just that it doesn't occur to you. And while that is unfortunate and a failing, I guess, of white men over 40, it's the reality. I would love to, I guess, hold everybody up to, well, it's 2021. I think everybody should know that transphobia is bad. But I guess if it's not something that you encounter on your day-to-day, sure, you don't think of it. And then when it comes up, it's like, oh, damn, well, we're in post. What can we do? Which is unfortunate.
Well, and I think that's an important point that you bring up, that, like, I don't have an expectation that every single person around me is going to be 100% gender literate, let's say. I don't know what would we call it, but like I know that trans issues and understanding of gender and transgender identities is complex and relatively new to the general zeitgeist of the world. So I don't expect every single human to understand everything. But what I do ask, which I feel like isn't asking that much, is that when I, as someone who exists in this world as non-binary, like shares my experience with someone or points out that I think a certain thing is harmful, at the very least that someone will sort of acknowledge that versus the much more common response of digging their heels in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I think like also when you're willing to have that like first moment of critique, that's when really good conversations about this fandom actually happen. Because it took some of my friends who are white, who are into Star Wars, like it took some trust building to get to the point where we could talk about this thing where I laughed. I still read this article from time to time because it's this Taliban fighter talking about how much he loves Star Wars, and the reasons he loves Star Wars are the exact same reasons I love Star Wars. And a lot of my white friends would get a little uncomfortable when I would bring that up because, but the core thing that he was saying was like, if you really look at it, like whose religion is banned, who fights like this cutting edge tech with basically repurposed civilian gear, who is vastly outnumbered, who has to like cuddle up to unsavory folks just to survive, and it's like, if we're being honest, America, you've always been the empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But after like we kind of talked about that, those are kind of people that like I really enjoy talking about with Star Wars, because it is like, no, the banned religion thing is like, there's this whole slew of jokes that Native people have about Luke Skywalker because he's this like preachy kid that kind of got half trained, never really did anything, and just kind of like coast on his reputation for 3 movies. And we all know that guy from high school.
Oh, that's so real.
Yeah. I liked what you brought up about like, you know, being able to have this conversation in fandom, and I think one of the things of like kind of taking that and like switching from a different perspective is I feel like in a way, if we're allowed to have these conversations in fandom, it's a safe place for people to get uncomfortable. Like if someone is able to kind of sit back, like able to like drop their guard enough to listen to some hard truths about a fictional character or a fictional universe, or a piece of media, something that I know media can be really personal, but like, you know, it's personal, but there's also enough of a distance that you could probably, you know, draw the line of like, okay, but this isn't me, and start engaging with, be it transphobia, be it racism, you know, sexism, homophobia, fat phobia, any of the phobias and isms, and like actually start like engaging with that with like from like a media that you enjoy. Like that is a relatively safe space to then slowly make the transition from, okay, these are the issues with the media I enjoy. Okay, now where am I in that? Like, and how does that reflect on me? So I wish people would kind of see these call outs less as like I wish that people would see these call outs as opportunities to like critically regard things instead of throwing up their defenses. Because I know that I personally, as someone who is white, has learned, and he actually someone who started engaging with fandom assuming I was straight and cis. It actually opened up a lot of doors for me to like critically examine how I view media. Okay, and how now does that affect how I view the world? And so, granted, it is a privileged position to be in where I have to learn that as opposed to like it being my everyday life. But it's still an opportunity for that. And I kind of wish people would see that as an opportunity and not an attack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it makes a good point too of like we see a lot of discourse in fandom over like story and like technical choices, and I feel like that gets so much highlight that when it comes to things like racism or transphobia or like actual issues, I guess, as opposed to like whether you like a creative decision or not, it gets overshadowed, and people put up their same defenses that they put up for defending why they love one movie more than the other or why they think one sucks. And it's like, no, like it isn't a conversation about like whether or not you should enjoy this thing because of a story matter. It's like it's looking at, like you said, like with the effects that it has on us as like the way we view media is how we also view and integrate with society. So it's more important, I think, than just whether or not you like a story choice. And I wish that people would, I guess, drop their guard, like you said, and take this as a chance to educate.
Yeah.
Or at least as a chance to, I don't know, like, it's great that people identify with characters, but sometimes I don't think that they see like what that character, they take them as like the character as an actual literal organic person and not somebody who has a role in a story.
Yeah.
And so like, so when you have people that are kind of like open to having those conversations and kind of open about like, why does this character do misogynistic things? Is it thoughtless or is there an intention behind it? Like, that's when you wind up with these really great threads like on Twitter of people saying things like, name a fictional character that calls women females. And you'll have people piling into those threads, naming characters that they love and have loved for 10 years. Because let's face it, season 1 Sokka is a misogynistic little ass and needs to get it out every time. But I love that kid.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great power that comes with like identifying with characters too. And I mean, Justice, you alluded to your relationship with Ahsoka, but I think that if there isn't that ability to recognize that, especially when it's a character like that's being curated, is that the word I want? Is being the story is being told by a lot of different people, right? So when a new party is introduced, in this case, Rosario Dawson, like that, I think I understand. I get it. Like this is a character that people have loved for a decade. Like people have been fan casting Ahsoka for years. People have been looking forward to this moment, and I understand why people wanted to be excited about this. But I still don't think that comes at the expense of recognizing the problematic nature that goes along with it. And so I guess it's kind of the inability to separate and see that there are real lives in this real non-fictional world that are harmed by this choice. So it's not just that we're raining on your parade, you know?
Yeah,
exactly.
And I feel like even I mean I remember, like you said, people have been fan casting Ahsoka for the better part of a decade, and like Rosario Dawson was my fan cast for a really long time.
Yeah, mine too.
And I liked the episode. I liked her portrayal. It's just it's so hard to watch and like see her face, I guess, and like think about. I guess we don't know all the facts necessarily with the alleged case, but the fact that it hasn't been addressed still is like it just looms over. And it's upsetting that not only did we go through the chapter 13, but that there's going to be an entire show where that's just going to be looming over.
Yeah,
and like from a practical perspective too, like it's I watched the episode too. Like I'm watching the show, and it's like, you know, I'm still grappling with where do I draw the line, because I know a lot of fans who I respect are going to watch this show, and it's going to be a challenging thing for me to see. How do we I don't know. I don't have the answer to this, but like, how do we enjoy the media while also being critical of what's going on? For me, like in the case of the show, it's probably going to be I'm not going to be able to watch the show because in this case, she is the headline character.
Well, and that's like kind of becoming critical of like not just this casting choice, which like I'm probably not going to be able to watch that show either. But like then actually looking at the companies that create the media that we own and how much of it they own, like I feel like that's why a lot of people have talked about, the backside of representation and getting like good representation, even for some people or some identities through these shows. They're still coming through Disney, so it's still this like there's always like there were critiques of like Avengers Endgame when it came out from queer people that linked to like things that they did in previous movies, like not letting them do queer confirming scenes with certain superheroes so that like the first moment could be in Endgame. Those people are like the Russo brothers and they still work there. They're still getting jobs. So it's Disney's got this like whole weird messed up thing where like they'll give you a win here and there, but if you step back, they still like somebody mentioned at the beginning, they're still courting this kind of conservative fan base, or this like want to be apolitical and thereby conservative fan base. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that like that's actually Disney as a company. Like they give to conservative super PACs. They're not like there's this kind of like tier of rich celebrity that they create that can be very like progressive as a person, but it all feeds back into like that allows the company to just dump $1 billion into Republicans' pockets every
absolutely.
cycle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dillon.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point, Tyrone.
And like, what are we supposed to do? Because they own 83% of all entertainment at this point. So like, I want to be entertained.
And like,
And even like
by all rights, Star Wars should be going into like the public domain soon, so we could just create our own like queer and trans Star Wars stories. But no, like Disney decides to just Pac-Man up another universe and extend the copyright on it. And it is literally like, what can we do as consumers?
You telling me I was like this close to being able to make trans mask Dexter Jettster canon? Like,
yeah.
And Disney took that from me?
Yeah, just like,
Dexter is canonically trans mask. What are you talking about?
On my birthday, that's I'm gonna release The Great Gatsby 2, Weekend at Gatsby's. Why?
I would read
because
the shit
I
out of
can.
that, is all I'm saying. Justice, were you going to say something as well?
I was,
Very
and now
fair. Well,
the
if
thought
it comes
slipped
back,
my mind.
then
oh, no.
we will come back to you. And in the meantime, just to kind of pick up on Tyrone, what you were saying, is that part of the frustration is there are some really big representation wins in The Mandalorian as well. And obviously the ones from season 1 of Pedro Pascal being the headliner and getting to actually see his face in one episode, but like he is very prominent in like interviews and stuff. But then also this season we saw Tamira Morrison.
Tamira Morrison.
I'm so
sorry. I'll let you.
As someone who is historically not about Boba Fett, I'm like really mad that I like now deeply like love him, and I'm like, I will watch the book of Boba Fett, and if anything happens to him, I will kill everyone in this room and then myself.
Yup.
It's an extremely common and bewildering sentiment that I think we're all sharing with you, Chris.
If anything happens to Boba Fett or Fennec, we're burning down Small World.
Oh my god.
The imminent Din, Boba, and Luke love triangle
God,
that I've been
please.
seeing everywhere. Favorite. My favorite.
And then,
season 2.
as you just said, Tyrone, with Ming-Na Wen returning as Fennec Shand, which was very good to see, and Giancarlo Esposito getting a larger role as Moff Gideon, and hopefully that continues. I know he's alluded to the fact that we're going to get a lot more Moff Gideon in season 3 as well. So these are, they're good things, and that's like it's great. It makes it fun to watch, and it's also really frustrating because we can't fully enjoy it because there's all the other stuff going on.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like, and sometimes, like, the fucked up thing is, like, it feels really dirty to me that they specifically make Pedro Pascal, like, work with so many TERFs, considering how open he's been about his sibling.
Yeah. I think another thing about, like, the representation that's really frustrating about the transphobia is that, like, out of the 3 known transphobes in the cast,
2 of them, like,
would have been really freaking awesome representation. Like, really freaking good wins at representation.
Like, granted, Rosario Dawson's in orange makeup, so, that's another woman of color in
orange makeup, but that's still a woman of color in a leading role and about to headline an entire show. I want to be excited about this. I want to be able to celebrate that. And then Gina Carano, she does not fit the normal, like, beauty standard body types. Like, I celebrated that in season 1, and I wish I could continue celebrating that, but she's transphobic against Black Lives Matter and supports a coup. Like, those are just those don't make up for, having big muscles.
Absolutely.
The irony of the rebel shock trooper supporting a coup is really something.
I think that's actually a Twitter account. It's like characters that would beat their actors' asses.
Yeah, let it be known that Cara Dune would be wearing a mask and would have her actual pronouns, in her Twitter profile.
Toward the beginning of this season, where it was like the scene of last season's finale where Mando won't take off his helmet, and because he doesn't want anyone to see his face, and he's like willing to die for that. And it's like it shows like her being like, I have to take your helmet off. I have to take your helmet off to treat you. And Din says no. And she says, but you have rights. And I'm just like, this is just so on the nose. All right, so let's look ahead. And I know that we've talked about how enjoyment has been, curtailed, I think is an understatement of what we've seen from the show. But looking ahead to season 3, as of right now, I don't think we have any reason to expect that Rosario Dawson or Gina Carano won't be involved with, season 3 and Ahsoka respectively. But what are you hoping for out of season 3? Both in terms of representation, in terms of kind of plot and storylines, just anything.
It would be so easy to write Gina out of the show between seasons 2 and 3. And there's the let's do another meme. The meme of like the big, strong, muscular dog that's like, it'll never happen. And then the little tiny meek dog that's like, I have a little tiny sliver of optimism. That's just so misguided. But maybe you could very easily just say, yep, she went off with the Rebel Alliance. She's gone.
I like a hope would be recasting Cara Dune. Like, there's been plenty of fantastic fan casts. Mm-hmm. And so just I would like the character of Cara Dune provides opportunity for representation. So if they recast her, I think that would be my ideal world, is recasting Cara Dune.
we as a fandom were willing to accept, how old is he? Like 75-year-old Mark Hamill aged down to be post Return of the Jedi Luke. I think we can accept a recast Cara Dune.
And even to the point of like, you know, I don't believe that Ahsoka has begun filming that. I would love either for more information about that situation to come out, or an Ahsoka recast would be fantastic.
Yep.
Flat out.
Yeah.
Tyrone, how about you?
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Like looking forward, it's just kind of. I think the last 5 minutes we've kind of been like discussing how people have always kind of taken what they got from Star Wars, and I would just like to see that default change a little bit, because it's been 30, 35 years of Star Wars, and it's still like, oh, I like this piece of it, or I saw myself in this one part of the movie, so I was able to write some really great fan fiction on it. And I just would really prefer if, like, I think, like, from the official standpoint stuff, I think we need to see more of, like, more willingness to, like, put things visible that they've just kind of said in interviews. Like, people have been interviewed on Star Wars like, oh yeah, Lando's pansexual, whatever. But we never see Lando doing anything with anybody except for, like, women and woman-coded droids.
Yeah.
Also a topic unto itself.
Yeah. And then, you know, and if we're going to have stuff that quote-unquote exists, but it's in the background, or it exists within confirmations of interviews, you know, then we can say, like, oh yeah, no, such and such character was a slave in the mines. We just didn't think that that was very important to the story, rather than, you know, baiting me with, like, the existence of queerdom in interviews, but then we have to sit through the slave storyline in every movie.
Yeah.
All right, well, is there anything else on Mandalorian, on season 2 or 3? Anything Star Wars that y'all want to leave us with as we wrap up?
Just something that's kind of funny and related to season 1, which is at an official NCAI event, a tribal leader wore a Baby Yoda beaded medallion. So now that character, on some level, has to be
That's
like part of official tribal history for the United States.
That's amazing.
Beautiful.
Incredible.
I am interested to see how they work around taking Grogu out of the show, or if he'll return, because I feel like a big push for a lot of people was the Baby Yoda show. So
yeah,
it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they navigate that, and if, you know, he's going to bully Ben Solo, which would
you see, that's my actual hope for the future. Is like, if Grogu survives 2 genocides by Skywalker, he's gonna be the one person in Star Wars that realizes that we just have to, like, stop hanging around that family.
Grogu is gonna be the first Star Wars character to break the fourth wall and just realize.
No more, like, no Jedi purge, just like this one specific family, like 5 people, and
they're just gonna do a Office style series about Luke's Jedi Academy, and it's just going to be Grogu staring at the camera anytime Ben does something.
Oh, man. Incredible.
See, these are the kind of innovative ways that you can bring us into the future, Lucasfilm.
I stand by that Star
Wars
is at its best when it's comedic, and so, like, more explicitly comedic things like this would actually be great.
Yeah, I think to that end, like, I don't know if anybody else has watched WandaVision yet, so I won't spoil, but seeing, I guess, a genre like superheroes take on a half-hour comedy. It's something that I would really like to see from Star Wars, and I guess like going into this fantasy world, there's so many different ways that we can tell stories, whether it's like horror or comedy, or give me a Star Wars rom-com, like, please.
Or like people talk about the EU, but that actually is an EU thing. There's this ship that's full of Imperial officers in one book that they always minorly screw up every once in a while, because if you're too good, you wind up working for Darth Vader, and nobody survives working for Darth Vader. So, you know, at the end of every season, they just have to screw up a mission.
These are all great. I want to watch all of these shows. Like, it's all amazing. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This has been a really incredible episode and a really incredible discussion. And I'm going to turn it over to you all to kind of, if you have anything you would like to plug, go ahead and do that. I will just say that all four of you are people who, like, when I'm going through my Twitter timeline and liking tweets, I need to like ration my likes. So I'm not just like, all right, I can't like every single tweet that you have done today. Like, that's just weird. I need to ration them a little bit. So you're all fantastic follows, and I really appreciate you coming on. Tyrone, do you want to start with just a sign off and plug whatever you would like to plug?
Yeah, actually, my name, again, one time is Tyrone. I go by Bud Quantum Entanglement on Twitter, and I'm going to plug something from work. I work for a little tabletop company, and we'll be having a game kind of launching on Kickstarter called City of Winter. So
I
check that out in
tabletop
February.
Gaming, so that is immediately going on my list. So thank you. Justice?
Well, I'm at Firespray Proto on Twitter and Instagram. I don't have anything to plug other than wishing everybody a happy, healthy, and joyful New Year.
I'm Danny Pirtle 19 on Twitter, and you can hear me if you like silly Star Wars thoughts. You can hear me on the podcast Rogue Podron. And I also recently breathed life back into my podcast Encyclopedia. And if you go back to episode 30, you can hear producer Kristen talking about IPAs. Don't tell all of my other guests, but that is definitely one of my favorite episodes. And in a moment of some pretty incredible synergy, right about the time this episode is going to be coming out, I'll also be releasing an episode featuring Kate talking all about hamsters.
I'm so
it's exactly as cute as it sounds.
She just like was giddy as she was recording it because she loves talking about hamsters and looking at all the pictures. And Dillon.
It was so fun.
Hi, I'm Dillon. I'm at a Dillon Dev, and that's Dillon Dev on Twitter, and I'm also one of the staff writers on the Star Wars fan journal site 1138. So that's 11-38.com. Numbers spelled out, so it's spelled out as words, not just 1138.
Fantastic.
So 11-38.
Well, thank you all again so much. And thank you to all of you listening for joining us for this discussion as well. We are going to be bringing the podcast back. It is happening. We are off our hiatus officially. We're going to do one more episode on The Mandalorian with bringing in our usual podcast hosts, Kristen, Miranda, and I want to say we'll have Kate. I don't want to promise it because the semester has started, but we're going to try. So stay tuned for that. And also, we are finally going to schedule our episodes on Shadowfall by Alexander Freed. So stay tuned for those in the coming weeks as well. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at BookWarsPod and on Instagram as well. Email us at bookwarspod@gmail.com and find us on the Tashi Station Radio Patreon is a great way to get in touch with us. If you have the means, before donating anything to us, please donate to the National Black Trans Advocacy Coalition or your social and racial justice organization of choice. All these great causes need your support year-round. And once you've done that, if you want to support us, you can either donate to the Tashi Station Radio Patreon or give us coffee at ko-fi.com/bookwarspod. I have been trying to be generous with the pictures of Orca, Jasper, Tony, and our new hamster Cerberus. 2020 was a tough year. We need all the good pictures we can get. But we'll tweet even more when you give us coffee. Our theme song is Whiz Bang by Poddington Bear. Our logo and artwork are by Joe Butera Design. And our audio and production are done, as always, by our very own Kristen Cerisi. So for all of us and all of our guests, thank you so much for listening. And we will talk to you, I usually say next week, hopefully in the next couple days. We'll see how scheduling goes. That was amazing. Thank you all so much.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks.
Thanks.